Welcome to the What Now podcast, where we document our journey through chiropractic. Our goal is to give you, the new chiropractor, our firsthand experience in running a principled, cash-based practice right out of school. Join us as we bring you real perspective, lessons learned, and the leading names in the profession as we build the practices of our dreams. Yo, everybody. What is up? Welcome back to another fantastic episode of the What Now podcast. Spencer and Zach back solo, well, duo in, but no guest today. What's up?
Dolo episode. What to do? What to do?
That's your thing now. That's your thing. So what's up, guys?
Gotta bring some New York swagger, some New York, Connecticut swagger into the mix.
You have a lot of that. So
I do.
what's up, Zach? Tell everybody what's new. Give everybody an update. What are we in? Second week of March?
Yeah, second week of March. March is flying by, feels like.
Yeah,
I think that's mainly because you and I are about to finish the 75 hard. So for me,
finishing 75 hard, which
March
I
is
get.
the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
in our next episode where it's just us, we should talk about the books that we've read and how we're implementing them because that's a big thing. But today we're going to talk about a little something different.
A little something different. Tell them what we're talking about and what they get to listen to.
Today we're going to cover what we would do if we would start over. So we're both about what, 18-ish months into practice or so, give or take,
Yeah,
about a year and a half.
yeah.
And at this year and a half mark, we talked to a lot of you guys about different things, and you guys ask us a lot about, startup processes and hey, like, would you start with this or would you do that? Or when you started, what would you do? So today we're going to talk a little bit about that, of kind of what have we learned or wish that we would have done or started whenever we start up. So the first thing I really want to talk about is kind of location. We both had very different location experiences whenever we started up. And so, Zach, give everybody like a little bit of insight into kind of how you started and where you're currently at.
Yeah, so from a location standpoint, I mean, I guess from where I was independent contracting in Dallas, and I was in maybe a 12 by 10, and I had like a little front desk that Dr. Richards blessed me with. And so that was really all I had. So I maybe had, we'll say generously 300 square feet to work with. However, that was for a really brief amount of time, and we both knew that wasn't going to be the forever plan, but it was an amazing blessing for my circumstances. But then when I moved in and and started within chiropractic, I sorry, hold on.
I think somebody's coming up into Zach's office, but I'll kind of fill you in terms of my story while he's doing whatever he's doing. But so Zach started as an independent contractor, and I started working at the Joint, which are two completely opposite experiences. So Zach was self-employed right at the beginning. I was employed by another company. I had a good time at the Joint. I got a lot of experience. I learned a lot about what I like and what I don't like, and how to run an office because a lot of times you're the only person there. So you kind of get to hold the wheel at that office or that clinic at the time. But so I started there and I was saving up money and I started at about 600 square feet, just a really small office. And it was actually even smaller than that. It was probably closer to like 400 square feet because I shared my office with an insurance agent right at the beginning because I couldn't afford the rent. And she offered to pay half of the rent to keep the office in there. So I was like, why not? Just keep the door closed. And turns out we became really good friends. But so I started really small and I kind of grew into bigger offices. Whereas Zach, he was in this like small independent contracting space, and then he'll tell you about more about his space. But so then after I outgrew my 400 square feet, the insurance lady, she left and it freed up an extra office, about another 200 square feet for me. So then I was about 600 square feet. And then after about 8 months of that, I was like, man, I really need a bigger office. And so right whenever we hit our 1 year mark, we moved into our bigger space, which we're in now, which is about 900 square feet. And to be honest, it's kind of small. And I wish we had a bigger office. I absolutely love my office. And if you've ever been into my office, it's really beautiful, but I wish it was a little bit bigger. So, sup, Zach? Zach is back.
Yep. Forgot to lock the door before we started recording the podcast, but had a patient. It's happened before, but she thought her appointment was today at 10:30. um,
Nice.
and it's tomorrow. So
That's
that stuff
okay.
does happen. Yep.
Yep. So anyway, finish telling everybody about your journey into your office.
Yeah, so I was kind of listening to you a little bit, which I guess I should have been more present with one person. But anyways, I then opened in Colleyville within chiropractic in a about 1,500 square feet office, and it was, to me, I still feel like it's a perfect size. I think we'll eventually, here in the next several years, definitely grow out of it. But for a 1 to 3 doc office, I think it's really prime for that. It already had a built out one office space, and so that's where I currently reside. We had to build out another office, so we had to put in 2 more walls, and for the most part, it was the perfect fit. But in regards to location, or I guess build out, one thing I wish I would have done was, well, I don't know about wish, but looking back, it would have made things a bit easier had we implemented X-ray sooner. Is that something that we're going to be implementing here in the next several months? And it's trying to find the time where the X-ray company can come in and install the X-ray system without it interfering with our patient's care. And so, fingers crossed that we can get that finished and finalized during the wedding and honeymoon, and then start up in June with X-rays. So that's one thing I guess looking back, wish I would have done sooner. I had several mentors say you should probably do X-ray, and I was like, no, 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 I'm going to do it this way. Um, and so here I am.
Yeah, I think that was my first question was going to be is are you going to just do that whenever you're closed for the wedding and the honeymoon?
That's
Just
the
because
goal.
that's what we're going to do whenever we're moving our phone lines to a different system. So
Mm,
we'll talk about technology and systems in a second. But
yeah.
yeah, so I started in the 600 square foot. Now I'm in the 900 square feet. And that was really the biggest office that I could get at the time. And I agree with you. 1,500 square feet is like the perfect amount of space. I would advise, this is with my professional quote opinion, if you're going to start out and you say, no, I want to start with a small office, the smallest I would start is 1,000 square foot.
Yeah.
Because if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a go-getter and you're going to be wildly successful and you're going to fill that office really fast. And you're going to, and like 1,000 square feet when you first start, it's going to feel huge.
Yep.
And whenever you finish it, you're going to be like, wow, this is way small. Like our buddy Colton, if you guys haven't listened to the networking episode, Colton, like I'm so jealous of him because he just got in this beautiful, like
Mm,
1,800 square foot office. Dude, it's perfect. It's so awesome. So I would advise something like that. I would
yep.
think anything over like 2,000 square feet is gonna be a little big, and it's probably gonna be really expensive for
Hmm.
your budget. And it kind of depends on your location. Like if you're closer into the city, you're gonna pay more for real estate. If you're farther
Yeah.
out in the country, kind of like I am, you're gonna pay a little bit less. But like
I
I pay
think
like,
I think on that topic is having realistic expectations. So if your mentor is in middle of nowhere, Nebraska, and you're trying to open in Tampa or LA or Dallas, and you're finding spaces that are 5, 6 thousand a month, and they're like, oh, well, that's too expensive. Um, yeah, it probably is expensive from the chiropractic standpoint, but they're also in middle of nowhere, Nebraska, where they could probably get 2,000 square feet for $2,000 a month versus in
yep.
Dallas or in a big city, that's going to be upwards of 8K.
Yeah,
And so,
you'll be looking at like, I don't know, like yeah, $4, $5, $6 a square foot. And that's per
yep,
month. And a lot of
yeah,
times in your lease, they'll be talking about like per year. So like
hmm,
when you see like $24, you just ask, like, goes that per year, per month? And most
yeah,
places will, because like $24 a square foot a year is a great deal. $24 a
yeah,
square foot a month is not. So
terrible.
um so
But I think
that's a
that's
thing.
also a big point too, is having a trusted commercial real estate agent of some sort.
Did you use
Um,
one?
I did use one. And so I initially looked at 27 spaces in Dallas. And so having him kind of explain the process, and he knew my budget and I was transparent with him what we were trying to do. And he was very much, and this was one of the few times where I appreciated having someone being like, well, you can't do that, right? Because it's like he's not gonna let me get into a lease that doesn't make sense for myself.
Yep.
So I think that's uh, something, and they don't get paid. You don't pay them, which is another great thing too. So
Yeah, and then in terms of location, as we kind of wrap up that topic, there's two main types. Like one of the big things is people always talk about road exposure, and they're like, oh, like blah blah blah, like you got to get good signage and all those kind of things. I don't even have a sign on the road by my office, and Zach has a beautiful sign. So, um, Zach, in your ideal spot, I know you're in a great spot and you love it right now, but what would you advise people? Like, what kind of places would you want to look for offices in?
I think the biggest thing from road exposure, I think it's a great point. Like we have a beautiful sign that we paid a lot of money for, and we've had two walk-ins that have been like, I saw your sign in 18 months. So maybe the sign stinks, or, road exposure is just not as important.
Yeah.
Um, but what I think in regards to road exposure is really important in today's day and age is the accessibility and the ability
Yes.
to find it on maps.
Yes.
And that is something I would look at when you're driving to a space. Think of when you're plugging into your maps and you're going to look, how easy is this for me to get to? And then also, if it's an office space, how easy is it to navigate that office? Because that is something that most people will leave an office if it's too difficult to get to. So if it's like on the second floor and there's no elevator, like people are gonna be like, people are going to look for a reason to leave, right? It's
Yep.
like, oh, I climbed up the stairs, right? You catch someone on a bad day, and they had to wait at a red light for too long, or it's just really difficult to get to your space. So that's one thing. Accessibility to highways is another big thing I looked at. So our space is about 5 minutes from two major highways in the area, and so that makes us accessible as well. And then not being too far off of a main road,
Yep.
whether you're directly on the main road, which is ideal, or you're one turn into an office space, I think is also ideal. And
Yeah.
so,
And to kind of finish that thought, I think that's really the biggest key is because like to give you guys some insight if you haven't been to our offices, I'm in like a office building. So we have like this big office building with like 13 different suites, and I'm in one of those, and Zach's in more of like a retail, like shopping center-esque place. So he has like front parking lot access, and like for us, you just go through the door and it's the first door on the left. But I think accessibility, like you're saying, especially if you're seeing families, that's the biggest thing, is like yes, is it close to the highway, but is it like right on the highway? Does mom have to like worry about her stroller rolling into the road or her 2-year-old
right.
running into the highway? Like, let's not have them like jump into the major highway right there. So, and then parking spots, that's a big one. Like, if you have a really
Huge.
small parking lot, it's going to be hard to get a lot of people in there at one time, and you don't want people to be like, oh, I had to park back on the street and walk all the way back up. Or if you only
Yep.
have two parking spots, you're probably not going to be able to have a super high volume office.
Yep.
That's why I love the medical park building type deal.
Mhm.
Like if you have a bunch of offices, where it's like a bunch of people, like healthcare, salon, like plastic surgeon or a
Yeah.
counseling center. Like I really love those kind of parks. It's because people are used to going there. Typically,
Yeah.
the quality of people you have going there, like when I worked at the Joint, all the Joint locations are next to like Taco Bell and Dunkin' Donuts and all of those kind of things. One, it smells up your office, and two, I just like don't love having that much like recurring traffic.
Yeah.
Like it's like people are going to come in and out, and there'll be a lot of people going through there, but it's like a huge volume of vehicles, like when
Yeah.
you have something that's like a fast food place or
Yeah.
something. So I kind of avoid those areas.
Yep.
Um,
And that's something I also look for is the suites, or like are the current tenants of that commercial space, could they be potential referral partners?
yep.
And then going from there. And I think I took a more uh optimistic approach with a personal training gym. Didn't know the lady at all. Found out she is a big hater of chiropractors. But anyways,
Heel
so
turner.
there's that. There's a golf outfitter right next to us. There's a jujitsu gym. There's going to be another gym. There's like a, a med spa. So it's like, okay, yes, we're in a retail location, but it's with people that are consistently walking in, and that's something we're looking to bolster is our quote unquote road exposure or our parking lot exposure with some different A-frames and some window signages and stuff like that, so that you can't just rely on people seeing a sign and being like, oh, that's where I'm going to go, but
Yeah.
grabbing people's
Nobody.
attention the same way we do with social media.
Right. Yeah. No, like in my eyes, my ideal client is not going to be like, oh man, I was at Fuzzy's and I decided that I needed to take charge of my health.
Yeah.
Like now they're at Fuzzy's. Right.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, I was at the gym and I hurt my back, and now I was like, I really probably should get in this chiropractor. I go to this gym anyway, it's right next door, and then you crush it with your experience. Or like for us, like we're right next door to a dietitian, a dentist, and an OBGYN, and used to be a pediatrician. And so all
Yeah.
these parents who are literally our ideal clients and women who are ideal clients literally are like, "Oh, this is awesome because you're right next door to all the things that I
Yep.
do, and I can come here and get all of my care, which is great. And it's safe for my kids. The building is quiet. There's not
Hmm.
a ton of these things. Some people we're like right in front of a neighborhood. Some people literally like, "Oh yeah, I just walk from my house," which is
Yeah.
super cool. So
Yeah.
that is kind of in terms of location, accessibility. I always would love to be on the first floor and closer to the main entrance rather than being on the second floor.
Yeah.
Uh, your second floor offices are going to be a little bit cheaper just because it's harder to get to.
Hmm.
But in terms of especially for chiropractic and like no mom is going to be able to bring a stroller up 2 flights of stairs. Nobody with a herniated disc is going to be like, "Oh man." And like they have these people that are like, "Remember when you couldn't walk the stairs?" But they can't get into your office if the stairs turn them away.
Yeah.
So, if at least if you're on the second floor, be as close as possible to the elevator, but
Yep.
ideally you want to be on the first floor.
Yep. Yep.
Um, cool.
So,
Okay, so that's location.
and again, just to harp on one last time, like the one thing I hate is going to another chiropractor office that is just impossible to find because
Yeah.
it's just not well listed on Apple Maps.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big thing too, is accessibility. So, uh, I mean, my ideal client uses an iPhone. So if you're not on Apple Maps, which is completely different than registering your business on Google, if
Yeah,
you
not the
register your
same thing.
business on Google, you'll automatically be on Google Maps. If you're not like, but you still have to list on Apple Maps. And the moment that you do that and then build out those profiles, both of them, and the
Yeah.
more you update it, the better it shows up. And it's great. And make sure it's accurate. Like, don't just be like, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Add as many specific coordinates and details as possible because you have to make it impossible for people to do it. Like
Hmm.
whenever I first started, there's Highway 377 North and then Highway 377. And so if you don't put north, you're going to be 15 miles down the road.
Yeah.
And it's like an industrial warehouse. And so then
Yeah.
people are like, I'm pregnant and I'm in a warehouse. Where am I
Yep.
at?
Yep. That's one issue we 3 or 4 times is there's a within health chiropractic in Plano.
Uh,
And at least now we're building up where we have more like say, but for some of our patients that are coming from Irving, which if you're like, I don't know what these guys are talking about now in terms of location, is about 20 minutes northeast of us, which this other location is 20 minutes northeast from Irving. So if you're in Irving, you're kind of 20 minutes from both within chiropractic and within health chiropractic. And so we've had a few people that are like, hey, my appointment's at 4 o'clock. I'm in Plano at this office. And it's like,
tough.
ah. And so we know it happens now,
Yep.
at least. Um, and more often than not, it's established patients. It's never happened where it's a new patient, at least that we know of.
Yeah. So, one of the things that really helps with that as we get into our next category is technology and
Mm.
automations, because you can curb a ton of those things with technology. You can stop a lot of those painful mistakes happening to you if you just have a good set of technology. One, I think that's most important that everyone sleeps on, a CRM,
Yep.
because everybody thinks that you have to be a marketing company or you have to be some sort of tech business or some product sales company to have a CRM. You don't,
Mm-hmm.
because if somebody books an appointment with you and they automatically get an email or text sent out to them that says, "Hey, this is how to find us. This is our video, blah, 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 blah." One,
Mm.
you're taking care of people better. Two, it stops that no show from happening. Three, just, it's just a great thing to have, and you're going to be top of
Yep.
mind all the time, and keeps you
Yep.
relevant in front of your people. So, Zach, what CRM do you use, and what would you
Mm.
advise back to startup Zach on a budget for that?
Um, I think budget or not, the CRM we currently use is Go High Level, and I've loved it. It does take it. There is a learning curve to learning how to use it. Um, but I've been a big fan. There's some exciting things happening in the Ryan Rider world, and so that may be changing our CRM. I think it's still going to be Go High Level, but they've built out their own platform similar to what I think you have with HubSpot.
Yep.
But I like Go High Level. It gives us a real phone number, so it's not an 800 number. So when we send out texts, like we're doing a St. Patty's Day giveaway, and our big push is Google reviews. And so we're able to send out a text message that doesn't come from an 800 number, which research shows more likelihood of it being opened when it's not an 800 number text message. Um, it also stores all of our leads, and it's very easy to plug in leads and keep track of where they're at through the sequence, and as well as keep track of current active and current wellness, which is a big thing for us.
Yep.
One from looking at how we're growing, but hey, we're doing a movement workshop, and we send that out to only our active and wellness, because that's included in their plans. And then we get 4 or 5 people signed up, and now they're taking 45 minutes outside of their normal week to come do that. And if you know or have an idea of retention, that goes a really long way.
Yep. So on our end, we use HubSpot, which is similar to Go High Level.
Mhm.
I hired this company called the Patch System, which is a transparently a Jared Moon business, because the guy does good stuff. But it is not cheap. It's not cheap, like at all.
Yeah.
To give you an idea, I'm spending like $2,100 a month on HubSpot right now because we're in our build out phase still. So it's a decent chunk of cash. To give you a like my rent is $1,800.
And to give like a non-built out Go high level is 97 a month.
Yeah. So you
But there's a lot of back end work that I and my team,
yeah.
and we even worked, got to give Travis Stewart and Making Moves a big shout out because they helped us build that out as well, which we paid for.
Yes.
But
With software, you will always, with anything, you'll always get what you pay for. But with
Mhm.
software and management things, like if you really want to get
Yeah,
the most out of your software, hire somebody who is specialized in that software that knows
yeah,
what to do. And you just say, hey, this is what I want it to do. And they can like nerd it up and go hard and like program it and stuff. It's
yeah,
just worth every penny because if you're making this big investment, you want it to actually do the thing that you're asking it to do. And you
yep.
don't want there to be like a backslash instead of a forward slash that stops you from doing that. Just like get them to do it. Um, so I use the patch system with my guy Jeremy DuPont out of Ripple Basecamp Physical Therapy. Yes, I partnered with a physical therapist behind enemy lines, but
No, I'm just kidding.
they crush it. And
One
so
sec. I don't think PTs are the enemy, so
no,
but we
they're
can go back to that on another
yeah,
day.
it's a joke. Anyway,
I know.
so that's what I use, and it's been super beneficial. So we both use a CRM. We both say it's probably the most slept on thing that people are not using, and everybody who is a high level practitioner and a very successful practitioner, they use those things. Uh, I would say you can kind of bootstrap it early on if you want. I would use Trello. That's probably the best one that I've seen. It's kind of cheaper, but you have to build it all out, but it's a little more user friendly to build out.
Yeah.
Um, but just have something in place to do it. I'd say once you are at like a 50% profit margin or so, where you actually have profit in your business, that's the moment I would implement it. You don't necessarily have to do it like right away, but I
Hmm.
would be looking to, that would be the first ad that I would have to your
Yeah.
software systems. Okay, so moving on, EHRs. There's nothing against the companies. It really just depends on like what is good for you, right? And I've had great experiences with all of them. So Zach, tell everybody about your softwares that you use.
Yeah. We used Jane to start. And it was pretty good. Liked it for the most part. There were certain features that we didn't necessarily, or I didn't necessarily, um, I guess, utilize to the fullest. Biggest one being online booking for new patients. I think that's something I missed out on. Just looking at more research where 67% of all potential patients are more likely to, uh, quote unquote, sign up with a doctor if they're able to book online. So if there's a stat for you in regards to your CR or your EHR software. But then we were realizing a few things. We're care plan based, and um, I'd seen EHRs that tracked through care plans, and Jane does not do that. So there was a lot of back end work that our staff and CAs were having to do to see, okay, they've been on 3 times a week for 6 weeks. Now it's time to shift. And that may have gone on for 7 weeks, or maybe they cut it early at 5 weeks. And so there just wasn't good tracking there on Jane. Um, it's great for like memberships, like wellness. If we were only doing wellness, we would stay Jane. like no reason to not. But there were some other things as like uh, creating Super Bowls. Um, and as we're getting into more PI, yep, we're going to do PI. We're going to do PI the right way. But um, with that said, that's a lot of coding and billing, and Jane is not equipped for that. And so we made the switch back in October, middle of September, October to Platinum. And they're coming out with the Platinum 2.0, which I think is going to be fantastic. But for the time being, we're on Platinum 1.0. And it was a headache. I think it stunted our growth ever so slightly because that was basically Josh's job for 2.5, 3 months. Like Josh's Q4 was the conversion of Jane to Platinum, because of
Dang.
how big of an undertaking Platinum is. Um, but I'm glad that we got that over with when we're still in a quote unquote small office, and not 5, 10 years from now where we're, you know, clipping 1.5, 2 mil
Yep.
a year, you know. So
Yep.
that was
So
that's what we did.
yeah, so on our end, if you listen to our previous episodes, I tried to make the switch with Jane to Chiro Touch, and they just came out with the cloud, and it was a little too big for my solo britches at the time. It was just me in the office, and I was like, oh, okay. Jane, I think,
Mhm.
is actually the perfect software if it would be chiropractic specific. Like, so Jane was made by chiropractors in Canada, and then they started doing all this integrated medicine stuff and
Yep.
integrated practice stuff, which is awesome. Like kudos to them because now their product can get to all kind of people. But I just would love if Jane would have a chiropractic specific version. I think it'd be really
Hmm.
cool if you could be like, oh, I want the chiropractic edition of Jane, or I want the functional med edition of Jane, or I want the aesthetics edition of Jane. Instead, they kind of like just say like these are general things like that health providers use.
Yeah.
And the interface is awesome. Their customer support is fantastic. The branding is great. The user interface is awesome. It's just hard to get specific with Jane. And since they're a Canadian company, they don't integrate with a lot of United States based companies. So, like everything else that you use, Jane doesn't integrate with, and it doesn't have an open API, which means that its software does not like to hold hands with other softwares. So, yeah, I think it's great if you're using just like a straight up wellness model. But for pediatrics and care plan based stuff, it does get a little funky. I've kind of figured out, Jane, where we can like get it to do all the things that we do, but it's not very intuitive.
Hmm.
So we're currently on the hunt for a new EHR. I'm not sure what we're going to go with yet. That's going to be a team decision that we're working through this month. That's our end of month quota, is to figure out what are we switching to, or what are we going to do moving forward in terms of software. But if we do switch, I'm actually going to hire another CA, and their only job is going to be to do the software carryover
Yeah.
instead of taking time away from our other people. I'm just going to hire somebody that's like solo focused on the new EHR.
Yeah. I think that's super smart. And then they become almost like a tech CA for you, or
Exactly.
whatever role they fit
Yep.
into. I think that's genius, and I think that's something looking back, I wish I had done.
Yep. So
But
we're most likely going to be looking. Our main contenders are Chiro Touch again and Chiro HD.
yep.
Those are our main contenders. We have a call with them on the 18th. But Jane is great software. If you plan on having a high volume care plan focused office and you only plan on providing chiropractic, which that's kind of what our podcast is targeted to, like principled chiropractors,
Hmm.
I would look for something that's chiropractic specific. If you're doing a care plan focused chiropractic office, Jane is fantastic software. I think it's perfect, but it just needs some more chiropractic specific features. Um,
Yeah. I think
so
if you're a membership based office, I think Jane.
dude, you got to go with it. It's the easiest
Yeah.
thing, bro.
Yeah.
It's cash, but and it's
Yeah.
cheap, it's affordable, but so anyway, that's software wise. In terms of phone lines, I use Sideline. It's a great one. I would use something that integrates a little bit more, which is like we're switching our phone line over to Dialpad, which is a more advanced thing. It integrates with our HubSpot, so all of our leads and messages can be tracked through people's accounts on HubSpot. But Sideline is great. It's really simple and easy, but I think you need to have something that tracks your calls and that
Yeah.
integrates with all of your things and can send mass text messages.
Hmm.
It can't do that because it's like a dummy line. But anyway,
Yeah.
Sideline is a great uh
Yeah.
it's a great software.
We
What do you use for your phone?
Our phone is Reach UC. They're a local Dallas-based company. Met the guy at a networking group. Um, I'm very curious on the quality in regards to how we sound on the phone. Something I've been noticing is it's very quiet on our end. Like it's hard for us to hear people, even if we have the volume all the way turned up, as well as what they can hear. So that's something I'm exploring as a potentially new phone system, especially as Platinum 2.0 rolls out. Allegedly, um, the phone number that they utilize for text reminders will actually be our actual phone number, rather than being two different phone numbers, which would be awesome.
Yeah, HD does
Um,
that, I think.
yeah, yep. And so that's a big hope. Um, but yeah, I think biggest thing is with our Reach UC, I can go in and track the calls. Where it's like every call is recorded. I haven't quite done that yet, but if I needed to, or not, if we, when we scale to, multiple offices or that type of thing, having something where I can go back in and check our lead CA's calls, in regards to like how did they sound when talking with new patients, and those type of things, I think is essential.
Yeah. We have about 10 minutes left on the show, so we're gonna move on.
Mhm.
But send us a message if you guys have any other questions about it. You can now follow us at What Now Cairo Podcast on Instagram, and you can just send us a message there. You can DM us each individually, but we love getting you guys a message. So next we're
And you
going
gotta
to
you gotta
Mark.
you gotta pay the fee. Pay the fee.
Yeah, pay the
Share the
man.
show.
That's right.
Don't be a hoe. No, I'm just kidding. That's
Stop.
Andy Friesen's thing. That's Andy
Yeah.
Friesen.
Okay. Anyway, we're gonna get into marketing now. So Zach, how would you change up your marketing efforts based off of what you've learned whenever you first started up?
Hmm. I don't know if there's. I think the first year, and something Ryan Ryder has kind of coined is, um, I think marketing is always testing, and so there's nothing that you like. I would say like I wish we did this more of, um, because in that first year, and I would imagine it's going to be this way for the next 3 years, is we're going to be consistently throwing, for lack of better words, poop on the wall, and we're going to see what sticks, right? And so we're we're doing screenings, we're doing workshops, we're doing Facebook ads, we're doing Google ads, we're boosting posts on Instagram, we're doing email blasts, so we're kind of hitting everything on all sides, and we're starting to get to a point. This is something Matt and I discussed last week, is where it's becoming really pivotal to begin tracking,
Yep.
um, at a very high level. Okay, where are we getting new patients from? Um, and the highest quality new patients, and okay, where does our budget need to begin allocating, rather than just kind of having a sloppy mess all over the place. And then just to be transparent, like look at our P&L sheets, our profit and loss sheets, and we spent $3,500, $4,000 on marketing. And majority of that went to something that produced nothing, right? Um, I will say, I developed a great relationship with the owner and the photographer of a magazine company. But was it enough to uh, advocate for the price of the magazine to be in the magazine? No. So that's something I would strongly advise to really look into print marketing, and what all entails with that. And that is a
Yeah.
decision I wish I had stuck with my gut. We advertise in a magazine that's not necessarily local to us. Um, the patients that get it are about 20, 25 minutes away. So,
Yeah. I would just say like at this point, digital is the way to go. It doesn't matter. Like newsletters and email marketing is actually probably still king
yeah.
in terms of like small niche marketing.
Mhm.
So follow Jared Moon. He's the email marketing king, which is why I use his company. Um, but yeah, print for me also at the same time, just not anything that bites. It's great. It's awesome. It's great to support local and it's cool to have like stuff to hang up on your wall that's printable.
Yep.
And it's cool to like see yourself in the magazine, but you're probably the only one that's going to see it.
Yeah.
Um, I yeah, and it's really nothing against print. Like I love all the magazine companies. I think it just for our market and for our population, it just for our business models, it's really just not the most effective.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just Zach and I's experience, but um, my CRM at HubSpot, one of the best parts about the build out is, and that's why I'm going to connect our phone lines, is because it's going to track where are people coming from, and we'll have a pie chart that'll show, these are internal referrals, these are organic website searches, this is Facebook ads, Instagram boosted posts. It'll track all of those things, which is why I went with the more expensive thing because I don't have to manually track it any. And once I link everything to that, it'll just show where these contacts come from, which is why I got to have the phone lines integrated.
Yep.
But that is going to show me the whole reason about Patch is to make data-driven decisions. And I think that the biggest thing with your marketing efforts is following the data because you can think of marketing, yeah, you can like throw stuff on the wall and see what sticks, but really I think of it as someone who grew up in Louisiana, like fishing. You can go into one spot and depending on what kind of fish you're fishing for, like back pain or prenatal or rehab cases, it's going to change what line you throw in the water. And so that's really just kind of what it is, right? And so you can't give up whenever you don't get a bite off of the first cast, but you just have to continually change your lure, right? So that's kind of what we're working on right now. Right now, what's working for us is email marketing to our internal people, which is generating a lot of internal referrals, which keeps our costs low. That's what works for me. But I'm also not in a super saturated area like Zach is, and so with Zach, you're competing with all the people who have been around longer than you, so you're gonna have to take more ad spend.
Hmm.
Um, but I think both of us agree that networking is probably the best thing that we've done,
Especially early on.
especially early on. Yeah, because you got to be likable and you got to be knowable. And so people don't know you and they don't like you, then they won't trust you, so then they won't do business with you. So
Yeah.
I think networking is the biggest thing. Zach, do you advise, or would you say big chamber or small networking group or multiple networking groups, door to door
Yeah, I
knocking?
think this is, and we've had this discussion before, but when you first start out, um, there's kind of, I think it's either three or four like main resources that you have in regards to a business. You have your time, you have people, and then you have money, right? And when you first start out, more often than likely, you don't have too many people working with you, either yourself or a CA. You don't probably have too much money, but you have a frick ton of time. And so for me, I wanted to 10x that time. And so I was at both a BNI, which is a small networking group, and as many chamber events as I could get to. It's, you're going to be handed 50 business cards. You're going to go through the muck, but building those relationships. And I was just telling a student that was shadowing yesterday, um, we have people that have never come into the office, but because we've developed such a great relationship through becoming friends and we see each other at these networking events, they now refer people into us, which is like kind of crazy to me. But that's been a it's kind of funny. It feels more like a passive form of marketing now, where you show up a couple times and people are like, "Oh, I've been waiting to see you. I wanted to schedule and ask a couple questions." But it's because I built that over time, just like you do with any passive income stream, where you got to build it first, and then it starts to generate that for you.
Yeah, it's building momentum. I mean, our networking is like that too. But I go to the same group every Wednesday, and I have
Yep.
for the past 18 months. I've never missed a meeting. Not once have I missed a meeting. So you got to be there, right? But yeah, so I do all of the like the big conglomerate Argyle events. Argyle doesn't have a chamber anymore. It's part of the Metroport chamber, which is like, dude, like 350,000 businesses or something. That's kind of too big for us. There's so many chiropractors there, and you don't see the same people consistently. So, but I do all the big local Argyle stuff. So when the community meets as a whole, and then I'm also in an exclusive networking group that has like single seats. So I'm the only chiropractor. We only have one insurance guy. We only have one remodeler. We only have one plumber.
Right.
All of those things. And you really kind of build like a little family, which is really cool. And you guys do business and life together and they become your friends. And then they support your business because everybody wants their friends to win. So
I
that's
think
a big one.
just to share, because I think we've been very transparent, which I love. Real quick on BNI, right? So this is something that I don't miss. It's every Tuesday, right after we hop off the podcast. That's where I'm heading to, and I'm now just re-upped my third year. So I've been in it for 3 years, and the buy-in cost is $899 a year, which sounds steep, but we have now built it where just if of people in the room, we generate over $1,200 in recurring wellness members. So a month, right? And so we cover all of that in one monthly chunk in recurring revenue on top of any referrals that we receive.
Yep.
Um, and that didn't happen overnight, right? Like there are still people in the BNI that don't come to me, which is totally fine. And I think that's something chiropractors have to get over as well. As like you're not going to meet someone the first time and they're going to come in.
Yeah, you gotta stop trying to catch every fish because then
Yeah.
like fish fry go look all weird, right? Like
Yeah.
you got to know what your market is and know who's an ideal client and who's not, and be okay to say no.
Hmm.
Um, but speaking of people, as we move on, we got like 5 more minutes left, which we're doing good on time. Because Zach has to get to his B&I. We're gonna talk about staffing. So both of us have, well, I now have three, soon to be four staff members. Um, and Zach has two. So, but that doesn't happen overnight either. So, Zach, tell everybody kind of what did your hiring process and growing your team look like, and how would you do it over again if you had to?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
I'll try to keep it brief. Um, hire sooner than you expect,
yep.
even if you feel like you and your other person are doing a great job. That was something that I saw too late in the game, where we were well over 100 visits a week back in June of last year. And it got difficult for me and Josh to do social media and do a bunch of these things. So I wish I had read 10x is easier than 2x sooner, because as soon as we hired a quote unquote marketing CA, that took a lot off my plate, while also bolstering the business because now someone can do that full time, and get paid well. So I think that's the biggest thing. Our hiring process now, for how we found Victoria, we use Indeed. That worked really well for us. I would love to, hire a mom that's a raving fan in the office, but we're not necessarily that type of office. We see a lot more professionals that already have jobs. But with that said, um, we put an ad out on Indeed. I did a 10-minute phone call interview, which was more so me explaining the role, and our core values, which is something I got from Ryan Ryder, is having a 7 to 10 things on your team code of honor, and letting them know, like, hey, this is what happens in our office. Like, we're 15 minutes early. We're 100% committed, and asking them, like, do any of those sound bad or like sound like they'd be tough for you? And then you kind of let it sort out from there. Then we do an in-person interview, and that's a whole process that Matt Morris was able to bless me with through his coaching, and then made the decision through there. So it's not just like have every person with the interview, or have every applicant come into the office for an interview. We sift through the resumes, and then we invite them to an interview. Some people don't even show up to the interview, which is always funny. And then we invite them to the in-person interview.
Yeah, I think
From there.
bringing people on to your team is and holding a tight filter for that is even more important than holding a tight filter for the kind of patients or people that you
Yeah.
serve.
Oh yeah.
Because like we're a pediatric office, but I can still help a dad with back pain. But if I have somebody who doesn't like kids in my office, that ruins my office,
Right.
right? And so I have two amazing administrative assistants, two CAs, people who are not doctors. Logan, who is 20, and she is our office manager, and she is literally the best, like a literal blessing. I couldn't, she's not here this week, and so I am very much realizing that she's the backbone of this office. Um, and then I have Emily, who is one of our raving fan moms, who is my virtual assistant, and they both bring immense value. Emily has three kids, and Logan has none, and so they both bring totally different perspectives on what's going on, but they both love kids and they love family and they love chiropractic and what we do. Um, my biggest question for you, Zach, is at what point of patient volume or collections would you look to be hiring your first CA? Because I think that's a big thing where a lot of doctors try to rock it out solo. So
Mhm.
when would you be looking to make your first CA hire?
I think I would start looking, which is different than hiring. I would start looking after about probably 2 months of consistent growth, after 50 visits a week
Yep,
is when
that's
I would start
exactly what I would
looking.
say. Yep.
Is when I would start looking. And I think it's, I don't want to say central. You should. I don't want to shit on anyone, but I think hiring at that 75 mark,
Yep.
for your first CA is going to take a lot off your plate and continue to grow.
Yeah, I just have standards in the office of every 50 visits we grow, we should grow by half of a administrative staff.
Hmm.
Like so every 50 visits up until now, right? About 200, like we can kind of manage up to 400 with our team. So because I don't need like 50 people working in the office, but um definitely at 50 visits, I would start looking at least for
Yeah.
part-time work because the minute that they start part-time, you're going to need them to be full-time.
Yep.
So I would start definitely looking at 50, and like if you're seeing 50 a week for a month straight, that means you have 4 weeks in a row of 50 a visit. You could say like, okay, that's pretty stable right there.
Hmm.
Especially 2 months of 50 or more a week, I would definitely be looking because that means that you're plateauing. If you're there for 8 weeks and you haven't seen any sort of growth,
Yeah.
which usually means that all of your energy and all of your capacity has been filled up as a practitioner. So it means that if you're stuck at this margin, usually it means that you need to free up some space, and that's usually by freeing up time or capital, usually both. And in terms of finances to pay your people, the minute that you can afford to pay them a 40-hour a week, whatever it is, that's what I would be looking at. I paid my staff and I give them raises before I give myself a raise.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I mean, whenever I was bringing home $1,000 a month, I was paying my office manager,
Yeah.
two, three, $4,000 a month or something like that because I invested in them and then they invested in the practice, and that's what grows the
Yeah.
practice for
I
you to
think
be
that's
able to bring
a
home what you
really
want.
interesting concept and
Leaders eat
something
last.
leaders eat last, but also open bookkeeping.
Yep.
Because I think it could be very easy, especially in a small office. Your CAs are seeing this money start to flow in, and they could be thinking like, oh, like Zach's getting all of that. And in retrospect, a lot of it is going into growing the business and not into my pockets. And so being transparent with them as comfortable as you want to be.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't think that your staff needs to know what everybody brings home, but I
Mhm.
definitely think they need to know what it costs to run the office.
Yeah.
And so whenever you go to raise prices or you say, "Hey, I can't give you a raise," or "I can give you a raise," which is even more exciting, that
Yeah.
and you have to set a standard. Like for us, like we need to operate at a certain percent of profit margin, and that
Yeah.
is dependent on what our revenue looks like, but we need to do that. And something that Steph told me in our last conversation, which was super enlightening, is you can't be in charge of the budget and you can't be in charge of the growth at the same time because
Mm,
budgeting is meant to not spend money and growth you have to spend money. So you need to delegate your budget to somebody else if you're really focused on growing. And
yeah.
that was a really cool insight for us. And so I'm
And that's
actually,
something I'm excited about is the CPA we just hired. He's a profit first CPA.
oh, cool.
And I think that's something that's going to really help where he's going to help with the budget
Yep,
on a month-to-month basis to the profit first systems
that's great.
while I'm focused on the growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So both of us would say hire before you're ready or
And
hire before you need to
I
because
think
you're
too
always,
that's another point on staffing that often gets underlooked is your bookkeeper and your CPA are also part of your staff.
yep.
So, and again, you get what you pay for there.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, you could probably get to like you can probably solo dolo like by yourself. And from my experience, you can probably get to like the 15, 20K-ish mark or so. And that should be about like, 75 to 100 a week where
Yeah.
if you're priced right and you're efficient, you can probably get to the 15, 20K mark. But I feel like and we see it in a couple of our friends, it's kind of hard to break through that barrier without the extra help just because like you're answering the phones, you're processing the payments, you're doing a lot of the small things that don't actually generate you revenue, and you need
Yeah.
to pass that off to a team member, or you could pass it off to a team member to make your life a little bit easier, and it's going to help you sleep better at night.
Yeah.
My life has totally changed since we hired Logan, and it's just the most invaluable thing ever. So
Same. Same
that's
here.
in terms of staffing. And then yeah, I just brought on my first associate, or like part owner slash Caitlin. So really she's the boss. Um,
Yeah.
but we just brought her on our second doctor at 200 a week. Because
Very, very, very jealous of that hire.
yeah, it's awesome.
Just some insight on Caitlin. She's a powerhouse, but when we were leading KTC, she was mine. As the president, I would always kind of go to her to GSD, get shit done.
Yeah,
Because
she's
that's her
awesome.
superpower.
Yeah, transparently, we doubled our revenue after her first month in the office, and
Yeah.
that was just part time. So,
Which is
it's been
not
great.
surprising.
No, it's
Yeah.
been awesome. She brings a ton of value, and she's also irreplaceable in more ways than one in my life. But, um,
We would hope. We would hope.
yeah. So anyway, that is kind of what we would do if we would start over again. It's not necessarily saying like, oh, we made bad choices and I would, scrap everything
Yeah.
because you learn lessons. But if you
Yep.
can kind of stand on our shoulders and learn from some of the lessons that we have, which is the whole reason of this podcast, we would love for this podcast to help you accelerate your growth to wild and crazy success, building the life that you want, whether you want to see 1,000 a week or you want to see 100 visits every year or whatever it is, right? But your practice is really a vehicle for you to create whatever you want in your life. And so the fewer road bumps and potholes that you can hit in that journey, the better it'll be and the smoother ride that it is. And so we hope that you can borrow some of our confidence and borrow some of our lessons to get you to where you want to go.
Nice.
You have anything else for the good of the order, Zach?
No, man. No, man.
Did you just say ma'am?
No, I said man.
It's ma'am. Anyway. Cool guys. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the What Now podcast. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the What Now podcast. If you took something valuable away, feel free to share it with a friend, post it on your socials, or give us a 5-star review. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.